Hello! In this video, I've edited out the cutscenes and I'm going to commentate over much of this run since a lot has changed. If you'd like to see the raw version of this run, there's a link to it in the description. Immediately, there's a trick here. I clip out of the window and drop to the Hogwarts letter rather than going down the stairs. That clip was found by Butterman. If you haven't seen any recent speedruns of this map, you can clip through walls up to 1 block thick using a quirk of the menus, and it will be used throughout the run. The rest of Privet Drive is pretty straightforward. Close the letter as soon as possible, do the menuing quickly, maintain sprint jumping as I head towards the bus, and try to follow a fast line. If you've seen any runs of this map before, this should be pretty familiar. There's not much to change here. Here I'm paying attention to where I land in my sprint jumps so I can jump up the curb quickly as I approach Stan. As I arrive, I try to maintain sprint jumping around the corners. In the Leaky Cauldron, I'll collect 2 chests for the loot. I need this loot so I can sell it and buy speed potions, which will be useful throughout the run. Coming up is another new strat. After collecting the chest and speaking to Hagrid, rather than waiting for the wall to open, I clip into it as I bind my speed potion, and I take advantage of some sprint jumps to push the rest of the way through to trigger the cutscene and skip the opening animation. As soon as I can, I use the speed potion and start running towards some loot. This may seem quite out of the way, but in the chest I'm going to, there's a second speed potion. This is valuable because I can't buy any speed potions until I finish the Diagon Alley quests. By collecting this loot, which contains other items I can sell, I'm able to maintain speed potions through most of Diagon Alley. I collect a second chest outside, and a third chest in Elix's elixirs. These contain more items to sell. When I'm done, I head to Gringotts to get the money for the other Diagon Alley quests. As my speed potion runs out, I use the second one. Then I head slightly into Nocturne Alley to get the location unlock, which will be useful later. Then it's on to Ollivander's to collect the wands as normal. I try to collect the wands quickly and avoid bumping into things. It's probably possible to go slightly faster by jumping over the railings, but I'd rather not reset here, so I take it safe. The next 2 shops are straightforward. I try to do the menuing quickly, but there's nothing special here. After I finish the quests, I head to the general store to sell my entire inventory. I mash the F key to sell, which is a bit faster than holding it if done efficiently. My arms were sore from carrying groceries though, so the mashing in this run is maybe not optimal. Then I head to Elix's elixirs to buy all the speed potions I need for the rest of the map. I've planned ahead of time, so I have just enough coins to buy these, and I'll use every single one of them by the end. After binding the speed potions, I respawn to warp back to the Leaky Cauldron as I start my way towards platform 9 3/4. When the respawn is done, I use a speed potion and navigate out of the Leaky Cauldron. There isn't anything too special about this, I'm just trying to take a fast line and avoid bumping into things. I'll use this time to say a bit about the run in general. I started working on this when my previous record was broken 2.5 months ago. Initially, I wanted to get a sub 57 time, so I started updating my route, timing things, and practicing the changes that Butter had already put into place in his run. As this went on, I kept realizing that it could go lower. I could break another minute barrier. Every time I felt like I was almost at the point of finishing a good run and publishing it, I found something new. And then fairly recently, I stumbled upon a glitch that would open up even crazier doors. At this point, I've changed something in pretty much every split, and I'm simultaneously surprised and excited that I've been able to push it this far. This run isn't perfect. I told myself that once I broke this barrier, I would accept it and move on to the other projects I've got lined up. What matters is that this run marks a huge milestone for Witchcraft and Wizardry speedrunning, and I'm excited to share it with you all. I'll also quickly go over the version differences. My last run was on the 1.13 version, and this is on the 1.16 version. 1.16 is faster for a few reasons. First, clipping works smoother. It's consistent to get through walls with one clip attempt, where it would take 2 to 3 in 1.13, so every clip in 1.16 saves time. Second, there are a couple of discrepancies in the 1.16 version, like missing hitboxes for Bombarda Maxima walls and no joke spring in Vera Verto. Third, there is a glitch in this version that wasn't possible in 1.13 that saves a solid chunk of time. Additionally, and it's not used in this run, but Borgin & Burke sells a rare book for 25 coins in 1.16 only, which can be resold in bulk to Hermione for 50 coins each, effectively duplicating coins. The downsides to 1.16 is that the Wingardium skip I used in my 59.22 run doesn't work anymore. That isn't a big deal though, since there are a few other quick ways to do Wingardium. There's some tricky movement as I enter the train to trigger the cutscene. As I arrive at Hogsmeade Station, I clip out the window to get onto the platform a bit quicker. This was also done previously by Butter. I head to Hagrid and start the Autoscroller. Other than moving my speed potion to my preferred hotbar slot, there's nothing special about this. I climb some trees and jump around impatiently, so you may want to skip ahead to when I arrive at the boathouse. After the cutscene, I arrive at the boathouse. I use a speed potion as soon as I can and head up the stairs. I try to cut corners as tight as I can without bumping into them to save time. At the top, I take a small cut by clipping through the fences on my way to McGonagall. As usual, I choose specific lines to get sorted into Ravenclaw. After the cutscene, I drink a speed potion and head to the prefect. This speed potion will last until the Lumos cutscene, so it's a free time save. After talking to Fred and George, I fast travel to the Ravenclaw common room. In the common room, I grab the potion from the chest. Sometimes I also grab a book, but that can be dropped during Stupefy to keep the inventory clean. I'm only collecting the potion because I don't want to have to sell too many different types of items later, and potions appear at the top of the chest so they're easy to collect. Approaching the Charms classroom, I clip through the window and trigger the cutscene. In Lumos, I use a potion immediately and cast a spell. I switch my slot to the settings because despite not seeing the hotbar, I'm still able to use it. I take advantage of this to clip through some walls and collect the stars. I've chosen a specific path so that I end on a star that would be hard to backtrack from, since I'm using a respawn to warp back to Professor Flitwick at the end anyways. The path might be able to be optimized a bit further, but I honestly think this is fairly optimal at this point. In a moment, I'm going to do a wrong warp to Defense Against the Dark Arts. Wrong warp is a glitch where timing a down or up input in the menu slightly before pressing the F key causes the game to allow a warp to the adjacent location, even if it's locked. After talking to Flitwick, I do the wrong warp trick to travel quickly to the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom for Stupefy. Arriving in the classroom, I loot the potion from the chest. Since I'm waiting on quest advancement anyways, it costs no time to collect this. I start the level by talking to Lupin and using a speed potion. Then I do the first room cut that Butter found. Now for a swag strat. Rather than clipping through the moving targets room, I do a sick parkour sequence over the bottomless pit. This is precise and only saves 2 seconds, but it's for the swag. Then I do some more parkour to skip the rest of the targets. Stupefy without using Stupefy. Oh, the irony. Rather than facing the waves of enemies, I use a potion and clip out of the arena. I run a few chunks away so that the enemies unload and the map thinks that I've defeated them. I use this downtime to navigate back towards the start of the level, collecting some loot along the way. Since I'm waiting on the rounds to pass anyways, these chests cost no time. I respawn at the right time so that I end up back in the arena slightly after the wave finishes, and I head over to talk to Lupin, finishing the quest. As I arrive at the potions classroom, I run to the farthest crate that's still inside the classroom. This saves a bit of time since I'd be waiting on the cutscene to start anyways, and the movement would be done after the cutscene otherwise. After the cutscene, I drink a speed potion and collect the rest of the crates. As I warp back to the potions classroom, I prepare to collect the final crate and do the menuing with Snape. After making the potions and binding them, I travel to the Charms classroom for Brackium Emendo. For a while, the route for Brackium Emendo has been to clip out and get far away enough to deload the enemies. In this run, I clip out without a speed potion by clipping slightly into the corner and turning around to sprint jump out. Now I do a menu glide. In the 1.16 version of the map, holding Q with a key repeat rate above 20 Hz tricks the map into letting you move inside the settings menu. Since the menu has levitation, I'm able to just fly above the void rather than use health potions, allowing me to sell them later instead. I use chunk borders so I can stay within a single chunk. This reduces the chance that the game gives me a lag spike and causes me to miss that 20 Hz requirement and unintentionally warp back to the arena. This trick also produces a rather annoying flurry of noise. As soon as the waves are over, I drop the 20 Hz Q presses, so the map teleports me back to the place I opened the menu at. I rebind my speed potions since I'm waiting for the cutscene to trigger anyways. Approaching Hermione, I prepare to use a speed potion after finishing the dialogue. I then wrong warp to Road to Hogsmeade, followed by Hogsmeade Entrance, saving time over using the Honeyduke's Passage. I use the speed potion after talking to Hermione since I want to use the speed during the fade-in at Hogsmeade Entrance, and the potion lasts until the Alohomora cutscene anyways. Then I take a specific route to 5 close notice boards and return to Hermione. So that menu gliding trick that I used in Brackium Emendo earlier is kind of broken. By pressing F and Q during the same tick, it's possible to exit the menu glide without going back to where it was opened at. In this level, I use that to skip right to the end. This works with any key repeat rate over 20 Hz, but is much more consistent the higher it goes. This is because the more times that Q is pressed per tick, the less likely it is to miss the Q press on the same tick that F is pressed. An alternative to high key repeat rates is to use the audio to time the input, but this is quite difficult. As I approach the final room, I exit the glide and use the inventory rather than the settings to clip into the final room of the lesson and talk to Hermione. This is intentional, but more on that later. I travel to the Charms classroom and head out to the training grounds to talk to Madame Hooch and do the flying lesson as per usual. At this point in the run, I was really nervous. You can probably see my hand shaking. I was a bit nervous after I did well in Stupefy as well, but after getting a solid Alohomora time and being on pace faster than I thought was possible, the nerves really hit. I was well on track to get my goal time, so I spent the time during flying lesson giving myself a pep talk and reminding myself that I can afford to play a bit sloppy as long as I don't make major mistakes going forward. There's also a change in flying lesson itself. Since my last run, I've figured out that it's possible to use a swooping motion on the broom to gain a bit of extra speed. I think this has to do with the game applying extra acceleration when going upwards, which turns into gravitational potential energy that turns into kinetic energy when swooping down. Who knew that high school physics would end up helping me go faster in block game? Since I was nervous, this wasn't perfect. I usually get 234. Before the swooping tech, a good time would be 238 or 239, so swooping saves around 4 to 5 seconds. I use the 8 seconds of waiting before Madam Hooch can be talked to as time to bind my speed potion. Since I'm waiting anyways, this takes no time. In Wingardium, the first half is basically the same as before. Take a straight line, clip, and move the cubes using the spell. If you've seen my 5922, you might remember that I skipped the end using a firework jump while clipped into the wall. Well, in 116 that no longer works, so I replaced it with the menu glide. I go up the left side, onto the bridge, onto the railing by clipping into the wall and jumping up inside it, and then menu gliding to Flitwick. The nerves were still super high, and I totally forgot which split I was on, and I did the movement for Expecto Patronum. I had no choice but to laugh it off. That's a mistake I'd never make, but it happened anyways because I was super nervous. I try to get a fairly good sprint jump line and jump far into the water since it feels fast. These first 2 pipes are basically the same as before. I run towards the next pipe after I take my shot because it affects the position I get moved to when the cutscene ends. For the third pipe, I realized fairly recently that it was a little bit faster to ascend the front side of the mountain using clipping than to go up the back side using parkour. I didn't get the full time save in this run because my playing was kinda shaky, but at least I got it. I also moved the speed potion earlier after the third pipe since it probably saves time and it lasts long enough anyways. The speed potion makes it so that the spell isn't really recharged when I reach the wall though, so I just clip through it. The rest is the same as before. I do Herbology much the same as the previous runs. I save a few clips by going through corners, though I'm playing shaky at this point so I mess up a couple, and I take slightly different lines, but nothing significant. I warp back to greenhouses at the end to get back to Sprout, which saves a few seconds. The beginning of Vera Verto is the same as before, not much to change. I don't execute it perfectly, but I do well enough. In the Knights area, I go up the tree and over the hedges. In Butter's run, he goes out the window, and that's quite fast, so I do it too. Since I'm going through the window, I take the closer spring, and I time a jump so that I don't have to do the bounce setup that I did before. I collect the chest on the landing because it's in the way and has a solid amount of coins. I don't get a perfect jump across the balconies, but I was happy not to fall off given how nervous that I was. The potion from Vera Verto carries over to the classroom and I run to Lupin. The first section is pretty simple here, but then comes a 2-minute autoscroller defending against the Dementors. For a long time, I've wanted to find something to do during this time, and it finally all came together recently. Remember I used the inventory to clip in Alohomora rather than the settings menu? Well, the reasoning was that, by exiting the settings menu while the armor stand storing the opening position was unloaded, I left a zombie armor stand where I started the glide from. Since the zombie armor stand was still loaded in the server chunks, opening the settings menu would have warped me back. I call this warp storage. Because there's 2 minutes of, well, nothing in this segment, I can intentionally set up one of those warp storages so that once the 2 minutes is up, I can warp right to where Lupin is at the end of the level. I navigate outside of the level to loop in at the end and clip in. Then I menu glide far enough to unload the armor stand and I die to the Dementors. This causes me to respawn, leaving a zombie armor stand by Lupin. The zombie armor stand is still loaded in server chunks at this point. After advancing the quest a bit, I open the settings menu and warp to Lupin. This warp alone saves somewhere in the ballpark of 45 seconds. In order to do Apparition, 500 coins are required. I have all of the items for that, so I quickly sell them. Using the Nocturne Alley unlock from earlier, I wrong warp to Borgin and Burke's, and then wrong warp to the Ministry of Magic. I drank a speed potion in the general store so that I can move faster during the fade-in at Ministry of Magic. Just some straight lines and tight corners to navigate up to Wilkie. I skip all the puzzles by just teleporting to the gates and clipping through them. After triggering the cutscene, I set up another warp storage by menu gliding a few chunks away. In the arena, I'm going to unload the initial mobs to advance the quest, triggering the waves to start, and I use the warp storage to immediately get out of range of the waves of enemies so that the waves can clear as soon as possible. After a quick switch to Expecto Patronum in preparation for Azkaban, I get ready to increase my render distance as soon as the waves are over. This is so that Wilkie is loaded when I get warped into the cutscene, otherwise he'll get stuck in the hall and I'd have to clip back out in order to talk to him when finishing the quest. I wrong warp to the attic here. It's higher on the grand staircase than the actual grand staircase location, so I'm pretty sure it's faster. I wind around Dumbledore's staircase, talk to him, and start heading to Grimmauld Place. It's a lot easier to get there with wrong warping now, so I just take a wrong warp to London Eye, and then a wrong warp to Grimmauld Place. I have to talk to Mundungus and trigger the cutscene to advance the quest. Then it's up to Moody as usual and on to Azkaban. Since I didn't buy a broom this run, I need to do the wave skips a bit differently. Fortunately, the way I did it in Brackium Emendo also works in Azkaban. I just have to use Expecto Patronum before gliding to prevent the Dementors from following me and killing me during the waves. After the waves are over, I just stop holding Q, crouch to exit the menu, and start running towards Moody as I cast another Expecto Patronum spell to keep the Dementors off me. After talking to Moody, it's just a quick travel to the headmaster's office, wait for the quest, talk to Dumbledore, and time. In the end, it was 49.49, getting the sub 50 by a comfortable margin. I find the repeated 49 to be aesthetically pleasing, so maybe the time losses weren't so bad after all. There's definitely time to be saved in this run though. With the same strats, a mid or low 49 should be possible. I believe there would need to be new strats found for a 48 to be possible though, so for now I'm happy with this time. I go through the lesson times at the end here in case anyone's curious, but that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching my speedrun. If so, please consider leaving a like and maybe checking out some of the other speedrunning videos on my channel.